cyberspace. This is the Spaceman. We're doing Hope Mountain Radio, and I have a guest in the studio. In just a second. All right, I have Kindi Fahrnkopf in the studio, and she's a writer, a poet, singer, songwriter, and journalist. So why don't we just start off with, when did you start your writing career?
Oh, I started my writing career at 16 when I became a poet. And I've been a poet all these years, performing at different things in Takilma. But just recently I wrote a book called Takilma Tales. And it was a labor of love that came about due to my working at the Illinois Valley News. And I'd like to tell you a little more about that. I was just working there as an accountant doing the bookkeeping when my boss Dan mentioned that he didn't know much about the hippies out in Takilma, and he wondered if I could write a few articles about the hippies out here. And I started in on that project until I realized it was a lot more than 4 installments, and it just got to be a 22-page series in the newspaper. And after that series ran last year in 2013, I got a lot of great feedback. So I just decided to expand my topic and get more interviews from people in Takilma and to make a book out of it. And so that is how I created Takilma Tales, my new book that just came out.
Okay, do you have any other books you've published?
Yeah, before that I published, self-published a book of poetry called Siskiyou River Reflections, and it's just a book of my favorite poems from living here in Takilma. And I've been in 7 different poetry anthologies where I've sent my poems in and had them published with groups of other poets. But I've always wanted to write more than just poetry, and so this was a chance for me to expand my writing.
So how has this book been received?
Oh, it's just been fabulous. I just have had so many great comments, and I've sold about 120 of them myself already here in Takilma. And the people have given me quite a few good reviews. And I'll tell you more later where you can find them and stuff. But yeah, the response has been fantastic. And I think the time was just right for me to do a book like this. So.
And you've been involved in the community for how many years now?
Well, I've lived here for 33 years. And excuse me. We came in 1980. My husband and I were hippies going around living in communes, and we'd been living at the Ananda commune in Northern California. And I just said to Jim, I want my own place. I want my own garden. And so when we came up here on vacation, we found a little business that we bought. And we opened the Caves Cobbler Shoe Repair and Birkenstock shop back in 1980, and we ran that for 5 years. But that first year, 1980, we found this property in Takilma, about 3 acres up on the old Cook Ranch. And so we bought that, and we built a little wooden cabin the first winter that we moved here, and just built it real quick so we'd have a place to live with us and our 2 little children at the time.
So what was it like that first winter when you got to Takilma? Was it what was the scene that was happening at that
The
time?
scene was just crazy because it was one of the hardest winters I'd ever experienced. There were feet of snow. And that December, John Lennon was shot and killed. And he's my idol. And I was devastated. And I think I cried all winter. I literally cried almost every day for months. And I just didn't know what to do except that I had to live my dream then. It became pretty urgent that all of us peaceniks had to create peace of our own. And by living here and starting an orchard and a garden and jumping into helping at the Dome School for our kids to go to school, it was all part of that dream. It was what we did to create a peaceful world. And I loved it. I was lonely because out there where we'd been, there was no friends, but here in Takilma, there was lots of friends. And we loved it.
So let's just back up a little bit. You said you were in another commune. Where was that?
That was in the Sierra Nevadas, and it was the Ananda Commune. And everyone wore those Indian saris, and people were very spiritual there, but you had to give up everything and just be part of that group. And although I believed in Yogananda's philosophy and loved that, I just told Jim, my husband at the time, I told him I really want to live in the country and be a farmer, and I want my own place.
So when did you get your hippie dream? How old were you when you...
Oh, I was a flower child in the 60s. My parents always said I was different. You know, and during the 70s, I was just a total hippie living, you know, in Santa Monica down at the beach. And I was going to college at Santa Monica City College studying English literature. I've always been a writer. I've always loved to write and express myself. And from there, you know, I met my husband at a hot springs, and we got married in '74. And we started having some kids, and so we wanted to settle down, you know, and we went all over the West looking for places and living in quite a few places. But Jim had heard of Sunstar. He'd heard of that mythical place across the border, and he said, we'll just stop there on our little vacation. And that was really a lucky break, because we came here, and I said, Jim, this is the kind of place for us. You know, I just love this place. And sure enough, the Creator gave us the ability to buy a little piece of property here, and it was quite affordable.
So I'm just trying to get a historical perspective. When you're traveling around the West, you must have run into a lot of different people and situations. What was the general feeling in those days?
The general feeling was we were pissed about nuclear energy. We wanted Vietnam to end. There was a lot of protesting, and a lot of that vibe was just to escape the madness and find a place where you could be with people of your own ilk, people that you agreed with, and places where you could live differently than society demanded of you.
Or were they springing up all over? Last week we interviewed Barry Smith, and he helped found the community of Canyon in the Bay Area, but he said there was a couple other ones that were shut down. I can't remember, you know, violation of building codes or anything to get hippies to keep hippies from living together. Basically, do you remember that, those days? Or?
Well, I do. I remember living at a huge commune in Taos, New Mexico, and they had a big, huge central building that was adobe and all these little cabins dotting the hillsides. And I just remember how well organized it was. And I remember that they made money by bringing in shows like people like Baba Ram Dass coming to speak, and then the people would pay to come see that. And they also had a huge garden. But they were a very successful commune. And I know that Ananda in California was also successful because people gave all their money to them. But we just, I don't know, something about that kind of communal living turned us off. We really wanted independent life.
So when you had heard about Sunstar, and by the way, for the listeners out there, Sunstar is a community actually in Del Norte County, in Northern California, which borders Josephine County in Oregon, and the state line is kind of blurred there. We have jokes about the altered state line because we feel like Sunstar is a part of our Oregon.
Definitely, Sunstar is just, it's as much part of Takilma as any place in Oregon, even though it's over the border. It's just the end of our canyon way up there in the high Siskiyous, and it's as close to the wilderness as anybody could ever live. And they do a fine job of just running their commune, and people are really great about participating and taking care of everything and working together. And we went up to find our friend Tom at the time in 1980, and I was actually 79 when we looked for him. But we couldn't find him, but we did drive down the road thinking, wow, look at that spot. She could live there.
And that's not so far off of the dirt road. Pretty much the pavement almost, just goes a little bit further. Yeah. And that's the place that you...
Yeah, we found our place, and it was completely covered in poison oak. But Jim said to just overlook that, and we're going to make it perfect. And we cleared a little spot for our house, and I've never regretted moving here. It's just been a blessing. Now, very creative, too. I was able to do all the creative things I wanted.
And also, you had the cobbler shop.
Yes, we did. For 5 years, we ran that. And we were very successful. There were so many loggers that needed their boots fixed that we were literally making big bucks for about 5 years. And a lot of money on Birkenstocks too, which were totally the hippie thing. So we catered to both sides of the aisle. And but after about 5 years, my husband at the time became ill from all the glue that he was breathing. And our marriage eventually broke up about a year later. But he gave me the property, and he knew I wanted to raise my kids here, and I wanted them to go to school here, so we parted amicably.
Now, I'm trying to get an overview for people. In 1980, there's a lot happening in Takilma. Do you remember any of the some big events that might be noteworthy?
Well, I do remember the giant standoff of hippies after the big bust in '82, where they threw obstacles on the road. But Jim pretty much protected me from any involvement in those more controversial aspects of the film at the time. And I was, a young mother, and I think I was pregnant again, because in 1982 I had another child. So no, we weren't involved with the controversy, but I think it was definitely a part of on our radar, And I learned a lot more about this history through researching this book. I was totally amazed at all the things I didn't know about. But I remember during those years starting out doing acting. I was in the medicine show, and I sang a Mae West song and acted in several more plays. Every year at the Women's Cafe, I used to do my songs and poetry. And also started working for the Common Ground, and I was submitting my poetry to that.
So then the kids grow up?
kids all grew up, and they're all dome school graduates. And I was just very involved in the community by then.
So now you had to you interviewed a lot of people that were here in Takilma before you showed up for your book.
Yeah, I certainly did. I interviewed over 35 people, and I consulted with 10 other people that were very knowledgeable but didn't want to be interviewed. But my biggest, oh, suddenly that was real loud.
Okay. You said your biggest.
But yeah, I just kept adding to my body of material from the people. And Robert Herning, a friend of mine, gave me a stack of articles about Takilma about this high, and I studied those all winter long. It took me over a year to write the book.
So what were, would you like to share some of those stories, or just to give people a little taste of some of the characters, because there certainly is a cast of characters.
Yes, definitely. Well, I just like to say that, yeah, my book it's a little paperback. It was published on January 15th, 2014 by Author House Press, and I worked with them for several months to design it, because they were a company that would allow you to design your own book and put all your own pictures in and make all those decisions about the font and everything else. So after that process, this is what came of it. And yeah, I just like to say that it really is not a tell-all. It is not. It does not tell you all the deepest, darkest secrets of Takilma, but it is a brief but revealing history of Takilma through the eyes of many of the people who founded Takilma and who were the most important to its development. And so I sought out those people that I thought were really key to it. And one of the first people I interviewed was Jim Rich, our local blacksmith. And he's since passed on, and so it's just really a magical thing that I was able to get his stories.
Yes, you know, I got him on Takilma Radio a couple of times, and I'm so thankful for that too.
I'm so thankful and grateful for that, because I think he was the first person I really interviewed with my little tape recorder, and he was quite eager to tell me the stories. And most of the people were a little reticent back then to talk to me about probably the more intimate details. But he was just completely open, and he was so ready to be interviewed that I thought, well, this is encouraging. I've got to do this. These people want to tell their stories, you know. And I just got really into it after that, realizing that, hey, you know, somebody's got to do this. A lot of people have talked about writing about Takilma, but nobody ever really finished the book. So it was like urgent by them, that, to me, in my mind, that I actually finish this project, and that I do Takilma justice. Because it's you know, hippies have been much maligned, and they've been given a bit of a bad rap sometimes. And I just wanted to show the positive side of Takilma, the things that we've achieved here, and that we've done, which are amazing, because they're different than you'll find anywhere in America today. So yeah, I do want to share a few of the excerpts out of the book tonight with the people out there. And
yeah, well, we can do that. Well, while you're getting set up, I just want to let you know you're listening to Hope Mountain Radio. This is the Spaceman Show. And thanks to our friend Robert Stone, we're in the Google Hangout. And that's a whole nother venue for us hippies living out in the woods, to be hanging out in cyberspace like we're doing. And it's been a little bit of a process to get all the bells and whistles and everything worked out, but here we are. And say hi to your mom. Say hi to the folks out there, because
hello, peace, folks.
We love you too.
We love you. I just wanted to say that it's great being back here with you, Spaceman. I've been a DJ here for years, from about 2006 to 2011. I was Misty Rainbow, and I was the Misty Rainbow show, and it was a big part of my life. I really enjoyed that. That was every week I'd get my playlist ready with, you know, the best classic rock in the world, and I'd read poetry of my own and other people's, and it was every Sunday from 2 to 5, and it really made, you know, a big difference in my life. I felt like I was really communicating with the world out there, and fostering, you know, the ideals of peace. And this station is a big part of my development here. It's really great to be here.
Yeah,
it's just like old memory days.
Well, you know, you're always welcome to come back, but
oh, I know, maybe it'll happen someday.
We've had a lot of history. We, just so people know, we might as well get into this a little bit, because it is Takilma history. A friend of ours, he calls himself the Radio Man. He brought the radio to Takilma, and we had our first broadcast on Labor Day weekend, 1996. So it was so cool to drive down the road and turn your car radio on and say, hey, that's Kindi on the radio, or whoever. We have probably, over the years, we've probably had 100 DJs come through and do some sort of radio show or another, and now we're on the internet. But a friend of ours has applied for and received a permit to build a low-power FM radio station. It's going to be KXCJ 106 point something, broadcasting out of Cave Junction. And boy, if that's not a big change. When the hippies first came to this valley, there were signs in the stores that said, we don't patronize hippie business. And not only that, people are getting beat up and worse. So, yeah, now we're getting a radio station in Cave Junction, and we've had this one on the air since 1996. So, just
it'll be great to be able to hear us on the radio again. I was a pirate back then, and it was real radical. I mean, we were doing stuff on the air that we'd never heard before. But mainly what I liked was the variety of music that these DJs came out with. I mean, there was every style of music, and there was so much great commentary, and there was a lot of satirical humor too, and it was great stuff. And those years inspired me then to come back to Takilma FM once the Spaceman got our station going online, and come back and do it for the legal station. But we were pirates. We were pirates back then, weren't we?
Yeah, we were. And I'm going to tell this story because it's just a good one, especially if you're a DJ. Our friend on the other side of the camera there, Robert Stone, was living up in the mountains in a mining claim. And he had solar panels or some kind of battery-operated radio. And Takilma Radio, we call it Takilma FM or Freak Radio Takilma. We had lots of different, because we just make it up as we go, right? Doesn't matter. We just call ourselves.
It was free radio.
It was free speech radio.
Free speech radio.
And he informed me just a little while ago when I was interviewing him that Takilma Radio was his lifeline, and they'd come in after a hard day's work, and they'd turn on the radio and say, "Hey, the pirates are back." The pirate, you hear the pirates on there. So, you know, that makes, that is such a good feeling as a DJ, because you come down here and you're sitting in the chair playing music. You have no idea who you're reaching and what effect it has on them. So you just do it, and you do it because you want to, and you don't. After a while, you don't care about who's listening, because that's really not important. It's just part of your. We've always considered this to be an art project, and it still is an art project. And so when you do your art, you don't know if someone's going to hear your song, look at your painting, or what. So we're just, the way I used to describe it to friends, it's like painting a picture with sound, and that's what we're doing here.
Yes, or weaving a beautiful tapestry with sound. And I felt like that my DJ years were, in a way, just like when I wrote the book. I'm weaving together songs, or I'm weaving together stories. But I'm still the artist that's putting it all together. And I love that about it.
That's right. This is we are our own producers,
Yes.
managers, everything. We do everything pretty much like that.
And I think it did reach a lot of people. I mean, I didn't get a lot of callers because I wasn't a call-in show, but I do know that people appreciated my music, the stuff I was playing, and the things I were putting together, because I always had commentary and people reacted to it and just enjoyed it. It was, for me, a way to communicate with everyone out there. Just like this book is a way for me to communicate with everyone out there about the hippie movement, what we've done, what we stand for, our ideals, and how we changed the world. I mean, literally. So yeah, I want to read a few excerpts out of the book. And I'll just start with, these are going to be short excerpts. And my book starts, with the Native Americans that lived here for thousands of years before any of us white people came. And so my book takes you, with that perspective in mind, takes you from the beginning till now. And so I'm going to start with just the first paragraph of the book. The early history of Takilma, the natives. The history of Takilma is a long story of the 5 waves of human habitation which existed there, beginning with the Native Americans of the Rogue Takilma tribe. Their stories say Takilma was actually named Dagelma, meaning dragonfly. Colonel Draper changed it to Takilma in 1902. The remote forested canyon leading into the botanically rich Siskiyou Mountains was used mostly in warm months as a hunting and gathering area for the partially nomadic tribes. The Takilma village, closer to the present-day Jump-Off Joe Creek, was home to a tribe led by Chief Jack Tolkney's Harney. So that's the first paragraph of the book. And it takes you through Grandmother Agnes Baker Pilgrim's history and her connection to the people here in Takilma today.
Yeah. And then what happened? What's the next phase?
And the next phase is about, chapter 2 is about the mining and logging years. And I was lucky enough to interview a man who lived here in the 60s, Gary S., who was actually the son of a family of loggers and ranchers. And it was probably more of a redneck, but guess what? He loved the hippies. So this was his little story. Gary S., who lived at his parents' ranch on Sowers Flat in Kirby, remembers coming to Takilma during his teenage years with his family to run their cattle up into the mountains. He recalled that they would, quote, drive them up into the mountains to fatten them on the rich grasses, and spend the whole summer up there, end quote. Gary remembered when, quote, they would take a wagon to the old Holland Grange Hall and ride it back after the dance, so they could do their chores in the morning. Everybody got together on the weekends for potlucks. I knew everybody back then, end quote. Being a local boy whose family were among the earliest settlers of the Illinois Valley, Gary still found a lot to like about Takilma in the 60s and 70s. He said, quote, I was more into that culture than I was into the redneck culture. Lots of people were migrating up here then, and it was crazy. I loved Takilma. It was the place to be at the time. Everybody had long hair and nicknames, and everybody wanted to move to the mountains and get their heads together. It was a movement, end quote. Gary remembers living in a small cabin in Allen Gulch during a period when he was roughing it. But after that, he enlisted in the military and went to Vietnam. When he came home, he married and started a family of his own. That's a little part of chapter 2.
Okay. And then who comes next?
And then the peaceniks came along and took over. So in chapter 3, we're discussing the beginnings of the movement. And I just discussed the general reasons why the hippie movement took off in America, because I felt that we needed to know more about that to really put it in context. So here's a paragraph from that chapter. Some of the hippie peaceniks became draft dodgers of the Vietnam War during the late 60s. They had to move to Canada, Europe, or run for as long as it took to get out of the draft, or to be jailed as a political prisoner in such movements as the Weathermen. The anger at President Nixon for not ending the Vietnam War was intense, and when Watergate happened and the war finally ended in 1975, the hippies were vindicated. Yet for many, it was way too late. They had dropped out and tuned in to the new Back to the Land movement. They saw the direction that America was taking and wanted a different life. The hippies were those who had gone through the draft in the Vietnam War, the civil rights movement, the women's liberation movement, the anti-nuclear movement, and had paid the price for the so-called drug war in America.
I just like to interject. It wasn't exactly, it never has been a war on drugs. It's been a war on people.
No, that's exactly my point when I put it in quotes, because, you know,
it's been a war on
it felt like we were persecuted, you know, and we had to get out to the country because these protests in the cities weren't doing any good.
Yeah, and now here we are.
Yeah. So then I get to the part where the first hippies arrive in Takilma. Now I'll just give you a little taste of that. Takilma in the early days was a mixture of old-timers and hippies. But slowly the old-timers sold their places and got away from a lifestyle they perhaps didn't care for anymore. Times had changed, and the tables were turning. One man's trash can be another man's treasure. So Takilma was just that bit of gold dust to glimmer in the eyes of the New Age hippies. It had been raped and pillaged, burned and degraded, but still, the land lived on and welcomed a new wave of green people. Perhaps it can be said that the Indian spirit reclaimed the land. Here then are a few of the voices of Takilma. Certainly only a small slice of the whole pie, but definitely some people who have given a great deal to the quality of life now enjoyed in Takilma. I mentioned the general reasons that a population of hippies found themselves living in Takilma, Oregon, but now I'd like to dig deeper into some of the stories about how people moved to Takilma and what made them stay. One of the first hippies to move to Takilma was Delbert Kay. who came from Southern California in 1968 to the tiny, rural, unincorporated town of Takilma. Because the land was cheap, remote, wild, unimproved, lawless, and largely uninhabited. Delbert left behind a struggling business in Southern California and brought his family north after receiving some letters from a friend in Oregon who worked at the old Takilma store, describing a place, quote, like paradise. So then it goes on into Delbert's story. Of course, you'll have to buy the book to hear more, but he definitely, Delbert had some wonderful stories, and because he was known unofficially as the mayor of Takilma, he knew a lot of things that others didn't know. And luckily I had his full support writing the book and got a lot of information from him.
And he's still here. He's still with us, with his wife, Helen.
Yes, definitely. Well, we've got us a little drink of water here, and so yeah, and it goes on to talk about the beginnings of the community and the beginnings of the Dome School and the Takilma Community Building. And in the chapter about the new Takilma People's Clinic, there's a paragraph about how we built a bathhouse in Takilma when nobody had any showers or tubs, and no washing machines either. So here it was. Other challenges back in the 70s were living without adequate services like flush toilets and showers. Keeping clean and washing clothes was difficult since trips to the laundromat were expensive. It was during the early 70s that a bathhouse was built at the barn, which allowed residents to come and bathe for free and use a shower, sauna, and hot tub. Robert, with a dedicated interest in public health, recalls how his interest in plumbing started. It was due to his college degree in archaeology that he felt an unusual enjoyment of digging up ditches for pipes. He realized how much people needed to get clean. So he and a group of hippies designed a facility and started work. Looking back now, Robert said, quote, "I didn't know I wanted to be a plumber until I started putting pipes together." The entire project took 8 months to complete and cost $600. Most of the fixtures were recycled from a house-wrecking job in Grants Pass. The bathhouse finally opened right before Christmas, 1972. So that is a little story from Robert Kearney, and it just illustrates how the hippies just did things on their own. They didn't wait for the world to provide anything, they just did it themselves, and they used recycled goods for a lot of the things they did. So that was really great.
Yeah, and the money would happen or not happen, they'd still get it done without money.
Definitely. And it was through a lot of these projects that people actually discovered their skills, their talents, their desires, their art. And the things they loved to do led them to their career in Takilma. Because none of us had jobs back in the early days. It just, you know, we might have had a little money from our lives that we brought with us and from our families that maybe supported us, but we were just starting out with nothing. But I remember going to that bathhouse in the early years, and it was great. I mean, there was a sauna, and you could just get very clean, and the river was right there, and occasionally the hot tub was hot, not always, but it was a happening, and you know, you could meet friends, and later on, that land was purchased by another family, and they still continued to allow people to use it, even though they had house there then and a family to raise, but nowadays it's theirs. Now most people have their own bathing facilities.
Yes, I would say it's a very rare thing for people not to have a lot of the creature comforts that many of us grew up with and came to expect. But we are also willing to do without them for altruistic reasons, if nothing else.
That's true. People tried to do things environmentally safe, but with minimal dependence on the outside world. And a lot of people developed alternative systems, composting toilets, and used alternative building materials. Even though we built our cabin out of a load of wood from Rough and Ready Mill, it was pretty cheap. You could just get this load of wood dumped off and it was rough cut. But we made it work, and over the years I've kept improving my house and making it better. Otherwise it wouldn't have lasted. But I don't think we thought about the long-term future when we first came here. We just believed in this hippie grid.
Yeah, and a lot of people are living off the grid still,
Yes.
generating their own electricity. They have their own drinking water systems, and solar photovoltaics, and solar hot water, and
Wood stove hot water.
wood stove hot water.
Cooking on wood stoves. Yeah, and most of us use wood heat. So a lot of us had to go get firewood every year. And I think the winters are super cold back in the 80s. It was harder back then.
This winter we had quite a snap of cold weather, actually. But not much, not any snow.
Yeah.
But no snow.
Yeah, global warming is affecting us now, definitely, but there's still those extremes in weather that are really disturbing. But anyway, so the book goes on. Let's see. And this is chapter 10. It's called Crimes, Protests, and Problems in the Early Years. And it goes into just different altercations and protests that happen here in Takilma. And a lot of times it was to protect our environment. So here's a part. Another big confrontation with the law was the hippies' opposition to the aerial spraying of herbicides in the forests around Little Elder Creek in 1980. After an organized protest where people occupied the units, the Forest Service helicopters left. But they made plans to sneak in the very next Sunday morning and hand spray the units. The word got out, and every horn blew and telephones rang, and Black Sunday rang out with the cries of hundreds of angry hippies. After that showdown, the Rangers retreated and never attempted to spray again, because those types of herbicides were banned in 1884. Helen said, quote, "We were lucky, because no matter what they did to us, we always had someone to go in and speak for us," end quote. Gilbert added with his usual wit, quick quote, "Takilma is sort of a grand social experiment. Everybody comes here with their own ideas, but somehow they all get along." And it goes on and on. There's quite a few incidents in that chapter about things that happened that made people become activists and environmentalists to try to protect the forests, the rivers, and make sure they didn't spray us.
Yeah, there was one other thing I think that's very significant is the building department started to try to enforce building codes, and that didn't go over big at all.
No way.
and it's still a point of contention among people here. And so they backed way off on that means of, I don't know, persecuting or however you want to call it, driving the hippies out, because we ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, there's a story in here about them trying to renovate and remodel the old Alcorn building, which the Takilma Community Association had purchased with community donations. And they were going to have the clinic move in there because it had been in an old house on Takilma Road and it needed a better location. So they were fixing it all up one day when 5 cop cars pulled up with the building department to give them citations. And they took it to court, and 2 of our community members were the defendants. And due to their excellent legal work, they were able to show that there was no, the building codes were simply not being enforced properly, and they weren't getting any citizen involvement or input, and people in the woods were being persecuted and not allowing them to build their homes. And so the judge threw the case out of court, and the code for abatement was rescinded at the time. So that story is in the book. So that's one thing where the hippies just pushed them back, and they were never again to bother us. The clinic opened in the Alcorn building and was there for, I think, about 15 years. And it was just a huge success because there was no medical care in the community at the time, or even in the Illinois Valley, except for one old doctor in Cave Junction. And so Dr. Jim Shames came, and he changed all that and brought health care to the people, and even people that couldn't afford it were given health care. And that was real revolutionary at the time. And beyond that, people were having babies, and so the birth mobile was outfitted, and they were going around helping people have their babies at home. And that was just one of the best things that could have happened.
Babies are still being born at home. I just got news that one of our younger sisters is due to give birth at home any hour or day now.
That is true. We still have one of the original midwives, maybe even 2 or 3 of them working, and they do a great job. And there's a lot about the midwives and how they got trained in my book, and just stories about what went on back then. I mean, it really helped all of us women. I had a baby at home here at Takilma in '82, and they all came, and I never had to go to the hospital or anywhere. It was like old home week. Your friends are there to help you, and it was wonderful. And, Dr. Jim was just an amazing doctor. The way he treated people was with a great deal of respect, and he was an amazing man. And he is still the director of the health department now for Jackson and Josephine counties, so he's a very important figure today.
Yes, he is. He was there when my son was born at the clinic. One of the last kids to be born at the clinic. Not the very last, but because then they moved the clinic to Cave Junction.
That's right. My daughter was one of the last kids to be born at the clinic, because they had a birth room by then, and you could go in and have your kid right there in downtown Takilma. But then the fire of '87 happened that fall, and I think it was in October of that year that Lori Prouty's son was born, and I think he may have been the last birth in the birth room, but I'm not sure, because maybe Ian was.
Ian was born.
But what about Austin? It could have been Austin or Ian that were the last births, but things slowly stopped after people weren't having as many kids anymore. So.
But like we said, now women are still having their babies born at home because of the midwives that had come out of this community all those years ago, and they're still doing their thing, and it's still happening. So we got a whole mixed bag. And then there's the Dome School.
The Dome School, it was huge because we built our community building kind of with the idea that not only would it be there for events, dances, and all that, but for school, because our little dome that started at Dudon, the dome had collapsed and it had been eventually burned and demolished because the design of it wasn't very good. But then the kids moved into the old log cabin behind the store for a few years, and they had a school there. But all during those years, we were doing bake sales every week to get enough money to finish the Dome School at the community building. And we finally did that, and I think it opened, was it 85? I think it was in the mid-80s that the Dome School finally moved into where it is today, and then it became a community building. And it was a school built on rollers. I mean, you could move everything out of the room and have a dance, and then move it back in for Monday morning so the kids could go to school. So it was just, you never see a school like that. But they did a great job with kids and made the kids really learn things, you know, that they were interested in. And the parents were very involved and could bring anything they wanted to school to help the teachers and to give other skills to the students. So it was a fantastic thing, and it was great to have a school close to home because you didn't want to send your little kids far away. So I had all my kids in the Dome. In fact, all 4 of my kids are Dome School graduates, and they eventually went into the school system in Cave Junction, usually at about 5 or 6 years of age, because they were ready for it. They were ready to explore the big world out there. And my last daughter was actually the valedictorian of the Illinois Valley High School, and went on to get a college degree from SOU, so she really made me proud, and just showed that the roots they had in Takilma were just something strong and something motivating for them.
Yeah, and the kids come back. Some of these kids have gone to Princeton and lots of different universities and excelled in their fields, but they come back to their roots.
They definitely do, and they just never stop coming back and enjoying it, and a lot of them settle down to come back and have their families here. And so my daughter lives in Selma, and she just had her daughter 2 years ago almost, and I'm a proud grandmother, you know. So that's just been wonderful.
So just so people have a reference, we are in the southern portion of the Illinois Valley, and Selma is in the northern portion of the Illinois Valley, and there's other little burgs in between. There's Holland and O'Brien and Kirby and Cave Junction. And I'd say, without a doubt, Takilma goes way past Four Corners.
It does now because we have assimilated into the valley. I mean, if there is an us and them, we are the Illinois Valley. We are part of them now, and the hippies have contributed a great deal because now we're accepted as members of the greater community. Now, a lot of that has to do with our kids going in and becoming part of the school systems and playing on the sports teams and making us proud. I mean, we came in to go to games, and we'd look down the aisle and we'd go, oh, hey, we're all on the same side. All these redneck people, we're all on the same side with them, right? And there are no more labels. We're all just people, and it doesn't matter. all that, because we're all winners. I mean, we're all on the same side here, and it was a great feeling of togetherness, and it was fun. I mean, seeing these kids excel in sports, and it just brought the community together. And I know I don't feel any separation at all from people in the Greater Valley and the Illinois Valley, and just feel like when I wrote this book, a lot of the people that came into the Illinois Valley News to say they liked it were actually people that were more on the straight side, you know. But they were curious about hippies. They want to know more because there was so many, there was so much bad information maybe about the hippies that they really want to know the true scoop, you know, what are these people all about? And so I have had a lot of response from people just wanting to know more, and even people that don't even know Takilma like it. So, you know, because they had their own hippie dream somewhere. Almost everybody had their own hippie dream, didn't they?
Oh yeah, I had mine. I definitely had mine.
I know Spaceman had his.
I mean, I still have it.
He's still living it.
I've always been proud to be a hippie.
I have been.
I have always been proud to be a hippie. I thought that it was a noble thing to do, and still doing it. You know, but like Kindi says, we're all mixed up now, and we don't. The labels aren't like they used to be, and that's all for the good.
It's all for the good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I work at the Illinois Valley News, and I've gotten to know a lot more people, and I work for other small nonprofits, and it's just great because we're creating this beautiful artistic community now where we have art walks, you know, in the summer, and you could bring your art to town, your crafts, and we've got all these great events that people can be part of, including the barter fair, the Hope Mountain Barter Fair, which is a brainchild of the folks out in Takilma to help support the Dome School. And they made a lot of money for it, and it's just been fun. I mean, we've had Jill T. and her giant puppets at Coyote Rising, and before that we had the illuminated pools. So we had these extremely creative people just bringing this fun atmosphere to town and to Takilma, and you could be part of it, and you could join in, and you didn't have to feel like it was us and them. It was just, you could do whatever you wanted in this place. It was so creative, and people were they just loved everyone, and I don't feel that we ever had a restriction on what we could do. But that's what I love about being hippies, being free, right?
Yeah, freedom. That's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
And also, there's a lot of creative, there's a lot of artistic people, a lot of very talented people, not just in Takilma, but throughout the Illinois Valley. Mm-hmm. And you'd be amazed per capita, the number of artists and singers and songwriters and musicians and sculptors and potters and woodworkers and, you know, craftsmen of one kind or another.
And people like Ricky Kay that just passed away that made like art out of recycled things, like little doodads. Like, you remember that the man that he put out in front of the old BB's art? That was made of like car parts and little pieces of wire and just little things.
Yes, I do.
And it was fantastic. I mean, it was just like this R2-D2 or something. It was just like a really neat sculpture. And it was just all made of recycled stuff. And he made the beautiful buffalo and the giraffe that people always see when they drive out to Takilma. They see those. And these are just examples of, you know, a few of the things that people have done and brought to our community. Their skills, their passions. People have just done whatever they wanted and had a big reception because people supported art and their friends. And there's small businesses that they created too from that.
Yes, there's several Um, well, it's the younger generation. They're opening up businesses in Cave Junction.
Definitely.
And you know, there's a whole nother wave of that going on. And also, we have people like Miguelo and doing his artwork, which is a lot of the same. Very creative.
Miguelo has a place called Rendezvous in Cave Junction where you can have your art. But below him is the Dig and Livin' store where my book is now being carried. You can buy it at Dig and Livin', and it's just this great new health food store that's sprung up in here.
That's right, and people are getting their gardens together, and it just keeps on going on. So we laid a good foundation, and the young people are digging it.
They certainly are. Well, I'll read my last excerpt out of the book now, and it's towards the end. It's just talking about Lori P. coming back to Takilma. Delbert stresses that Takilma has assimilated into the rest of the valley and contributed a great deal to its development. Robert, who agrees with that, said, quote, "Spirit of togetherness has spread from Takilma to the wider valley. The most wonderful thing that has happened is that, if there is an us in them, now the Illinois Valley is us." End quote. Lori P., who now lives at the coast, still visits Cedar Gulch often. Lori says, "I still love coming to Takilma. It now feels like a retreat, so quiet and beautiful when I get to the end of the road. When I return to Cedar Gulch, I cherish the darkness, clear drinking water, stillness, and of course, good friends. There is nothing like old friends that you raised your children with, grew up with, and created a whole community complete with a school, a medical clinic, a work co-op, and a food co-op. We had it all, from vision to reality. I feel blessed I was able to work at the Dome School, the Takilma Food Co-op, Green Side Up, volunteer at the Takilma People's Clinic, and be a part of the staff of the Common Ground. Being involved and a part of all the different entities helped me feel very connected with Takilma. It was a wonderful 30-plus years." End quote. So that's one of our illustrious hippies talking about how much this place has meant to her over the years, and that's towards the end of the book. So.
Hey, speaking of that, you happen to be on. We have a community newspaper that comes out quarterly. It's called Takilma, the Common Ground. And Kindi, you're featured in that.
I know they put me on the front cover.
Front cover
I'm so honored
of our local news.
I sent them in a couple excerpts, and they put me on the front cover, and I even had one of my neighborhood friends gave a good review, which I didn't expect. So it's very, very nice to be featured there, and I just love that. I used to do a lot more for Common Ground. I used to do illustrating, and once I did a whole issue on poetry, and I illustrated it all, or got illustrations to put in there. Because we couldn't use photos in the early days. We had to illustrate everything ourselves. And I used to even do their bookkeeping, but now I don't do it anymore. But yeah, they've been a big part of my life.
So how can people get a hold of your book?
Well, it's available online. They can go to my website, takilmatales.com, and there's 3 or 4 ways to buy it on there. You can buy it from the publisher Author House, or you can buy it from Amazon, or you can buy it through PayPal. And if you order it through PayPal, I can personalize it and autograph it and send it directly to you. However, you'd have to pay $5 shipping on that. And then the fourth way is you can click on the Oregon Books link, and you can get it at the Oregon Bookstore in Grants Pass as well.
And people locally, if they don't.
And then local people, they can get it at the Dig and Live In, as I mentioned. It is now available at the Illinois Valley Visitors Center, and you can buy it there right on the Caves Highway. And eventually, by the summertime, it'll be available at the Chateau Gift Shop at the Oregon Caves as well, because they're the same organization. And it's also available at Cabin Chemistry, and hopefully it'll get in one other location, and it'll probably be Bear Images, hopefully. And then, you know, I'll be going around. Maybe I'll have a book signing coming up, and you can get one directly from me as well. You can always email me through my website and say, hey, I want to get a special order or whatever you want, and I can help you.
So what do you got planned? What's next? Anything?
What's next is some people are hinting that there should be another sequel to this book, and it doesn't have everybody's story in Takilma. And yeah, I thought, you know, maybe I should write more. Maybe I should have interviewed more like 100 people. But I kind of wanted it to be a small paperback. You could slip it in your pack when you're traveling and read it, or take it to the beach. Didn't want a real heavy reading thing. A lot of people don't read much anymore. But even someone like my son who doesn't like to read said he liked it. So that, you know, I think it's readable. I think it's the kind of book that you could take in and go, yeah, I can relate, and I can kind of picture it. But my next project, I hope, will be writing another book. And on my next book, I hope to write more about my own experiences as a hippie, and perhaps use a novel format to do that, so I can explore those ideas. But I also want to write a screenplay. I have a lot of ideas. You know, just think that they're always about hippies, because, you know, that's my topic. I enjoy writing about that. So.
Well, cool, Katie. Thanks a lot for coming in. Is there any other things we could talk about?
Well, I could just say that I just loved writing the book, and I hope people relate to it, hope they enjoy it. And I hope it leads to my having a writing career, because that's my dream, and it's all about making your dreams come true in Takilma, isn't it? And maybe I'll write another book of poetry, because I have a lot more poems to share, and it might just come to that too.
So what's your website one more time?
And that is Takilma Tales, TAKILMATALES.com.
All right.
And I hope you contact me through the website. You can sign my guest book, you can give a review, you can contact me personally, and you can buy the book. There's also a lot of photos from the book, and these are black and white photos, and they're in color. In the some of them are in color on the website, so that is fun. And there's also a lot of other historical photos on the website that I didn't have room for in the book, so you could go there and check all those photos out and enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
You know, there were a lot of other communities springing up, like in the Lower River in Selma. There's quite a community down there, and also Browntown up in Holland, and lots of different places.
Yeah, well, a lot of the people that couldn't find a home in Takilma, or couldn't find land because it was limited, they moved to these other places, O'Brien, Kirby, Cave Junction, but they're still part of Takilma. That's the thing. I mean, they're still our family, and you know, we became like an indigenous tribe where we just all knew who our tribe was, and it didn't matter where you lived. And a lot of the people would travel every winter and be gone for a few months, and then they'd be back. But you know, that's just the way it is. You know, I call them the perennial travelers of Takilma, and they always come back. And almost everybody that even ever moved away from here always talks about coming back. And, you know, this place just grabs your heart and makes you want to live here. It's got a lot of love, and it's got a lot of freedom. And we're on the forefront of the things happening in the world today. The legalization of cannabis, it's all very strong. It's all movement. It's all part of Takilma, and we're leaders. You know, it's happening still. And so my book tries to capture the romance of the hippie movement.
You know, a lot of people, they moved over to Ashland in different places in the years gone by. But for me, I don't like to go past Four Corners. You know, if I can help it, I stay on this side of Four Corners.
Yeah. It's all about being at home and having a garden. And, you know, I think I spend an enormous amount of time trying to grow my own food, because that's a political statement. You know, that's the statement that we want to be self-sufficient. We want things to be organic. We don't want GMOs. We don't want people flying overhead. We want our privacy and we want our freedom. And part of that is we want to be self-sufficient. So growing your own food is revolutionary. And I spend a lot of my time now doing that and getting a lot of joy out of it. And I know Spaceman does too. We all work at our little projects.
That's right. This is our life, and we don't really consider it work. That's what we do.
And volunteers. We're volunteers for all the little organizations, the Rome School, Community Building. Hope Mountain Radio, please send support for Hope Mountain Radio. They do so much to help us in our lives here, to entertain us and to communicate with us, for us. I'm really honored to be here tonight and be one of the first webcam broadcasts from Takilma FM. It's like a first.
Right. It's a second.
It's a second,
yeah, pretty much the first of this type where we have two people on the camera.
Yeah,
that's right.
We're new at this, but you know,
yeah,
we hope it turned out good, and we hope you guys really liked it. And yeah, we just love y'all out there. You know, I know there's people all over the world listening to this, and we just want to say peace to you all. I mean, we want a peaceful world, and we want to live it right here. So we hope you all find your peace too.
And I just want to give a shout out to the people in Williams, because that's another sister community over the hill, over the Grayback Mountains there. And they have their radio station too, thanks to the inspiration from Takilma Radio. So how cool is that?
That's super cool. I mean, they started the barter fair and we got it from them, or they gave it to us, and now we gave them a radio station, and they have their own school. So it's like we have both fostered each other's growth with this sister town of Williams.
That's right.
And they're totally hippies there too. I mean, they deserve to have their own book. And basically, I think, you know, there's a lot of people in my book that could write their own book, their own stories. People like Delbert, a whole book of his interesting stories, unusual stories about things that happened in Takilma. People like Dr. Jim could tell his whole story about starting that clinic and his whole life adventure and what happened with him. There's a lot of people in this book that could write their own book, because my book only just introduces you to the whole picture. So, and I've had some people tell me that they're inspired to write their own books now. Having seen Takilma Tales, they realize, I can do it. If Kindi did it, I can do it. And I said, yes, you can. You write what you need. Get that out there. We need to, you know, be activists still. And the way I want to change the world is through my words. So I give my poetry and my writing, and I hope that it helps people and it changes people, and also gives them joy and makes them like smile and go, oh yeah, I remember that, you know, and just just that joy, you know, because we had fantastic lives, and you know, the freedom we enjoy is just unprecedented. I mean, when you look at what might be happening around the world, we have it. You know, we have freedom, we have beauty, we have this forest that we work to protect. And by the way, there's a lot about the forest protection movement in my book because I did work with them for 10 years. So it's a fascinating story. You know, we're forest guardians right here. We're here for the Siskiyous. They are like one of the most amazing mountain ranges in the lower 48. You won't find a place like this. And the hippies just came here and drew a line in the sand and said, we're going to protect this. This is it. You can't go any further. Yeah, and the story of that is just, it's in my book, and it's amazing. It's amazing. It really is.
All right. Well, thanks.
But loved it. Yeah, I loved writing it, and hope you all enjoy it.
Hey, thanks so much, Kindi, for coming down.
Thank you, Spaceman. Yeah. Appreciate it so much.
No problem. It's all part of what we do. Yeah. So I'm not, now that we're kind of wrapping it up, I'm not sure how the Google Hangouts works.
I'll take care of it on my end.
Say that again?
I'll take care of that on my end, Leo.
Okay. Our moderator, our very willing supporter, Robert Stone, he's the guy who's bringing it to Google Hangouts, and he says he's going to take care of it. When I do my show, I like to play music, and I don't even have a clue what I'm going to play now, but I got an idea.
Good night, then. Peace, folks.
Okay.
See you later.
So thank you, Kindi, and we'll keep this on for a minute or two, Robert, and while we transition. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Kindi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kindi.
That was awesome.
That was awesome.
Okay, so we're gonna do this. And I'm gonna see if we can get some music on this thing. Get the mics off.